Hi soulmates, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jacinta. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by. In this channel, I share sewing and pattern drafting tutorials, and in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to cut and sew this corporate dress with double sleeves. If it's what you love to learn, kindly watch till the end. And if you're yet to subscribe, please turn on the subscribe button below and also turn on your notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Without wasting much time, let's get started with this tutorial. This is the fabric I'll be making use of. It's a crepe fabric and I have 3 yards here. I also have this lace I'll be using for the sleeves, and I have just 1 yard of it here. Starting off with the pattern drafting, from the tip of my pattern paper, I'll mark 1 inch downwards and square across, and I'll label that my shoulder line. Placing my tape on the shoulder line, I will mark 11 inches downwards for the bust line and 17.5 inches for the half length. I'll square across and label these lines. From the half length, I'll mark 10 inches downwards for my hip line, square across and label the line. From the half length, I'll mark 25 inches downwards for my knee line and 5 inches below the knee line for my full length. I'll square across and label the lines. On the shoulder line, I'll mark half of my shoulder measurement, which is 9 inches. I'll also mark 3.5 inches for the neck width and the neck depth and connect with a curved line. I'll mark 1 inch downwards for the shoulder slope and connect it to the neck width. From the 1 inch shoulder slope, I'll mark 8.5 inches downwards for my armhole level and connect with a straight line. At the point where the armhole level ended, I'll extend the line and label that my chest line. I'll find the midpoint of this straight line. On that midpoint, I'll come in by 1/2 inch. Then on the chest line, I'll mark what of my bust circumference. Then use my curved ruler to connect from the shoulder slope to the 1/2 inch I came in by, so what of my bust circumference on the chest line to form my armhole curve. Now I'm going to mark my dart. On the bust line, I will mark 4 inches, which is half of my nipple to nipple measurement. I will mark 4 inches also on the half length and on the hip line, and I'll connect with a straight line. On the dart line, I will mark 6 inches downwards from the half length, and on the half length, I'll mark 0.75 inches on both sides of the dart line, and connect the 0.75 inches upwards to the bust line and downwards to the 6 inches I marked. Now I'm going to impute what of my round body measurement. On the bust line, I will mark what of my bust circumference. I'm going to be adding my sewing allowance on the fabric while cutting. On the half length, I will mark what of my waist circumference and replace my 1.5 inches dart. On the hip line, I will do a hip allocation. I'll divide my hip circumference by 2 and minus 1 inch. Okay, after minusing 1 inch from half of my hip circumference, I'll divide it by 2 and I'll mark that on my hip line for the front hip line. Okay, on the knee line, I will minus 3 inches on my hip circumference. After minusing, I'll divide it by 4 and mark whatever it give me there. I'll do the same on the full length. Afterwards, I'll connect the marks with my ruler and mark the side bust dart. Okay, for the side bust dart, I'll come downwards by 2 inches from my bust line and connect it to the dart line like so. I'll use my curved ruler to connect from the bust point to center of my armhole curve like so. Then go ahead and slash it open. I'll close the side bust dart and hold it down with my masking tape. Then I'll go ahead now and cut this out. Then for my skirt part, I'm going to remove the front skirt dart. To do that, I will mark 1.5 inches on the side front at the waistline and reconnect it to the hip line like so and cut it out. Now for my back pattern, I've ruled my shoulder line, so I'll go ahead and level it. From my shoulder line, I'm going to mark 11 inches down with my bust line and 15.5 inches for my half length. So the front and back half length are not the same. There are 2 inches difference. The 2 inches we marked for the side bust that is what we are going to minus from the front half length to give us the back half length. Okay, so after marking, I'll go ahead and square across and label the lines. Placing my tape on the half length, I will mark 10 inches downwards for my hip line, 25 inches for my knee line, and I will also mark the full length and the 1.5 inches for folding. Afterwards, I'll square across these lines and label them also. On the shoulder line, I'll mark half of my shoulder measurement. I'll mark 3.5 inches for the neck width and 1.5 inch for the neck depth, and connect with my curved ruler. I'll come downwards by 1 inch from my shoulder slope and connect it to the neck width. From the shoulder slope, I'll mark 8.5 inches downwards from my armhole level and connect with a straight line. At the point where the armhole level ended, I'll extend the line and label that my chest line. I'll find the midpoint of this straight line. On that midpoint, I'll come in by 1/2 inch. Then on the chest line, I'll mark what of my bust circumference. Then use my curved ruler to connect from the shoulder slope to the half inch I came in by quarter of my bust circumference to form my back armhole curve. Now for the dart, I'll come in by 4 inches on the bust line, half length, and on the hip line and connect with a straight line. From the half length, I will mark 6 inches upwards and extend the dart line to that 6 inches. I'll also mark 6 inches downwards from the half length. Then on the half length, I will mark 0.75 inches on both sides of the dart line. I will connect it to the 6 inches I marked upwards and to the 6 inches I marked downwards. I'm going to impute quarter of my round body measurement. On the bust line, I will mark quarter of my bust circumference. On the half length, I will mark quarter of my waist circumference and replace the dart intake. For the hip allocation, on the back hip, I'm going to divide my hip circumference by 2, add 1 inch and then divide it again by 2. Then go ahead and mark the answer on the hip line. The width of the paper could not contain the measurement, so I had to add extra paper. On the knee line, I will minus 3 inches from my hip circumference and divide by 4. So I'm going to mark my answer there and now mark the same measurements on the full length. Afterwards, I'll go ahead and connect the marks. I'll also connect from the dart line to the midpoint of my armhole curve. Then go ahead and cut this out. The sewing allowance and the zip allowance will be added while cutting the fabric. Now to cut the asymmetric neckline, I'll get a new pattern paper and fold it into 2 and place the center front on it like this. Then go ahead and cut it out. After cutting, I'll open up the new pattern paper and place it together with the side front like this. Then use a masking tape to hold it together. On one shoulder, I'm going to mark 1.5 inches from the neck width and mark 6.5 inches downwards. You can do 7 inches or 8 inches depending on how deep you want it to be. At that line where I marked 6.5 inches, I'm going to come inwards from the armhole by 3 inches. Then I'll use my curved ruler to connect from the 1.5 inches on the shoulder to the 3 inches I marked inwards from the armhole like so. On the other shoulder, I will mark 0.75 inches inwards from the neck width. With a curved line, I will connect it to the 3 inches I came inwards by from the armhole curve like so. I'll extend this line that I just drew by 2 inches towards the armhole. So you guys can see what I'm doing, right? And from this point here, I'm going to mark extra 2 inches, okay, and extend the line. Afterwards, I'll go ahead and cut this out. I'm going to mark the width of that collar. Let's just call it a collar on the asymmetric neckline. So I'm going to mark 3 inches. Okay, this 3 inches includes the turning and the joining allowance. So after turning the lower part with 1/2 inch and joining the neckline with 1/2 inch, you're going to be left with 2 inches. I will mark 3 inches downwards from the neckline, and it's going to be from this side of the shoulder to that extended 2 inches line. After marking the width, I'll place a plain pattern paper underneath and trace out the collar. After tracing, I'll cut it out. I was done cutting and this is what it's looking like. What I'm going to do now is to draft the sleeve. I'm going to draft the basic long sleeve, then use it to cut the sleeve that has opening. From the tip of my pattern paper, I will mark 1 inch downwards and square across. This is going to be my starting line. Placing my tape on the starting line, I will mark 4.5 inches downwards for my bicep line, 12.5 inches for my elbow, and 23 inches for my wrist. I'll square across these lines and label them. Though initially I didn't rule my elbow line, but I later did. So go ahead and include your elbow line. I will measure the armhole of my dress. Whatever I get it, I'm going to mark on the biceps line. With a slanted line, I'll connect from the biceps line to the starting line, and I'll mark the midpoint of this slanted line. With my curved ruler, I'll connect from the starting line to that midpoint, and from the midpoint also to the biceps line, just like the way you see me doing. Afterwards, I will measure the curved line to make sure it aligns with my armhole measurement. On the elbow line, I will mark half of my elbow circumference, and on the wrist line, I will mark half of my wrist circumference. I will also add my sewing allowance of 1.5 inches. After marking the measurements, I will connect and cut it out. After cutting out the pattern, I'm going to be cutting out my lace fabric now. Before cutting, make sure that the stretchy part of your fabric is placed as the width. So I'll fold my lace fabric into two and place the pattern on it and cut it out. After cutting the first sleeve, I'll use it to cut the second sleeve. Or you can just fold your fabric into 4 and cut the 2 sleeves together. Now I'm going to be cutting the second sleeve that has opening. To do that, I will fold my plain fabric into 2 and place the lace sleeve on it like so. I'm going to be marking 1 inch at the center of my sleeve for folding. And also make sure you have enough fabric for the A-line at the side of your fabric. From my full length, I'm going to be marking 7 inches downwards. This is going to be the full length of the second sleeve. Out of that 7 inches, I'm going to be folding the bottom part of my sleeve with 1.5 inches. So I'll be left with 5.5 inches. On that 7 inches line, I'm going to mark 13 inches as the width. You can make yours wider if you wish. The opening on the second sleeve is going to start 1 inch below my elbow, okay? So I'm going to mark 1 inch below my elbow. Afterwards, I'll go ahead and cut out the length and open up the center of my sleeve. At the side of my sleeve, I'm going to connect from the 1 inch below my elbow to the 13 inches A-line that I marked like so. After connecting, I'm going to cut it out. After cutting at the full length of my second sleeve, I'm going to come in by 1.5 inches from the center and connect it to the 1 inch I marked below the elbow. Then go ahead and cut it out. Okay, so I'm marking this because I want my slits to be obvious. Okay, I don't want a situation whereby after closing the sleeves, the 2 openings will be coming together. I don't know if you guys understand what I'm saying, but I want the openings to be very much apart. So I'll use this to cut the other sleeve. What I'm going to do now is to trim the back shoulders. So you know the front shoulders were altered because of the asymmetric neckline. So I'm going to trim the back shoulders so that it will align with the front shoulders. I'll separate the 2 back pieces and place it together with the front shoulders like this. On the back shoulder, I will remove the 0.75 inches we marked on the front shoulder and connect it to the back neck depth. Then go ahead and cut it out. I'll do the same for the other shoulder. I will also cut the facing I will use to turn the front and back necklines. What I'm going to do now is to join my fabric pieces together. Placing the front piece front facing front, I'm going to join the center front to the side front using 1/2 inch. I'll do the same for the upper back piece. I'm going to be closing this side of the collar and the bottom part of the collar using 1/2 inch. I'll leave the upper part where I'll be joining to the neckline and the shoulder part open. For the sleeve that has opening, I'm going to mark 1 inch below the elbow. I will join the center using the 1 inch allowance we added. From that 1 inch below the elbow upwards to the shoulder points, I will leave the remaining part downwards open. I was done joining the center front and the side front of the upper part together and also the back side. What I'll do now is to place the skirt part and the upper part front facing front and join it together using 1/2 inch. I'll do the same for the back sides. I was done joining the center of my sleeve. What I'm going to do now is to fold the remaining part downwards using 1 inch. This is me folding the open side of the sleeve with my hemming gum. I was done joining the skirt part and the upper part together, joined one of the shoulder and torn the collar. What I'm going to do now is to attach the collar. To do that, I'll first of all mark out the 2 inches extension we added on the neckline of the collar when we were drafting. Okay, so I'm going to mark out these 2 inches and I'm going to turn it in. I'm going to sew in these 2 inches because these 2 inches will not be entering the neckline of my dress. So I'm going to sew it in. I've done that and this is what it looks like. So this is what I mean. I'm going to notch that 2 inches so that I'll be able to turn it to the right side properly. After turning, I'll give it a good ironing. I'm going to place it on the neckline of my dress like this. You can see how it matches the neckline of my dress. So I'm going to pin it down and then join the second shoulder using 1/2 inch. I was done attaching the collar to the neckline of my dress. So this is what it looks like. You can see that 2 inches extension. So what I'm going to do now is to turn the neckline of my dress with the facing. Okay, so I forgot to tell you guys that I also joined the shoulders of my facing separately. So I'm going to place the facing and the dress front facing front and pin it together, making sure that the neckline and the shoulder aligns from the front to the back. Make sure that it aligns, both the joining on the shoulder. I'll pin it down, then go over to my machine and join the facing and the dress using 1/2 inch. I was done joining the facing and the dress together. What I'm going to do now is to trim the 1/2 inch allowance and turn it to the wrong side, then iron it so that it will relax. I'm going to fold the bottom part of my sleeve with 1.5 inch. What I will do now is to join the sleeve. So first of all, attach the sleeve that has opening, that's the outer sleeve, before joining the lace sleeve. Or you can join the 2 sleeves together just like the way I'm doing. So you place the plain sleeve first, the outer sleeve first, then place the inner lace sleeve on top, then join it to the armhole of my dress using 1/2 inch. I was done joining the sleeve. The last thing I'm going to do to this dress is to join the 2 sides of the front and back using 1.5 inches allowance we added. So I'll place my dress front facing each other and pin the 2 sides together. Then go ahead and mark 1.5 inches on both sides. Afterwards, I'll go over to my machine and sew on the 1.5 inches line. While joining the sleeve, I'm going to join the 2 sleeves separately. You can see in the video that I pinned the 2 sleeves separately. And that will be all for the cutting and sewing of this dress. If you find this video helpful and you've learned something, please guys, encourage me by hitting the subscribe button below and also turn on the notification bell. So once I upload a new video, you'll be notified. It goes a long way to encourage me to drop more tutorials. Thanks for watching and see you guys in my next tutorial.